Welcome to the daily reflection for Tuesday, August 26th. The gospel reading for today's daily mass comes to us from the 23rd chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel. It reads, Jesus said, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You pay tithes of mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier things of the law, judgment and mercy and fidelity. But these you should have done without neglecting the others. Blind guides, you strain out the gnat and swallow the camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You cleanse the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of plunder and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, cleanse first the inside of the cup, so the outside also may be clean." So I want to provide a little bit more context to today's gospel passage. A tithe, or a tenth of one's produce, was commanded in the Old Testament to support the Levites, the temple priests, and the poor among the people of Israel. And the law specifically mentions that tithes should be given on grains, wine, and oil, but it was debated among Jewish scholars whether this applied to everything a person grew. So the Pharisees believed that to truly obey God's command on tithing, they needed to provide a tithe on every plant that came from the ground, no matter how small. So the tiny herbs of cumin, dill, and mint were a meticulous but visible way for the Pharisees to demonstrate how they are fulfilling the law to its fullest. So again, with all this in mind, the words of Jesus Christ can become much clearer. It does seem maybe a little strange to most of us that someone was more concerned about making sure that 1/10 of someone's garden is donated to the church. But again, it was an outward show of how someone's living in accordance to what God is asking of them. And it was easy to measure because, again, 1/10 of the cumin, 1/10 of the dill, 1/10 of the mint goes to the church, and therefore I know that I am following what God has prescribed for us, for me. But again, when it comes to the other aspects, Jesus talks to them about judgment and mercy and fidelity. We know that sometimes these don't have as objective measures as, again, produce from a garden. So in our own lives, so that we don't become pharisaical, we have to make sure that we look at the totality of what Christ asked of us, so that again, we don't focus on the things that are easily measurable, but we focus on the totality of what's asked of us. That again, to love God and to love neighbor means that we have to do many things, not simply the things that again are easy to measure, easy to observe, and I think sometimes, too, easy to show off to other people and to say, yes, I am faithful because I did X, Y, and Z. I am faithful because I have donated X, Y, and Z. Again, there is more at play in our faith than, again, the easy, measurable things of our lives. And thus, the last part of today's gospel is that outward appearances are simply that, outward appearances. Because again, Jesus reminds the scribes and Pharisees that again, the outside of their lives looks pure, looks holy, looks as if everything is correct, but again, their hearts and minds are turned towards things that reflect things that are contrary to God's will for their lives. So again, Jesus says we need to cleanse the inside of our hearts and minds, literally cleanse the inside of the cup, and then if we do that, the outside will reflect that reality. Now again, we know our hearts and minds sometimes are very disordered, and very much our hearts and minds betray us sometimes and lead us down the paths we don't want to go. But again, Jesus is consistent throughout his ministry that we, in order to follow him, must have hearts and minds made pure so that our actions reflect what we truly believe what we truly think, and hopefully following Christ in all we say and do. But again, don't get focused simply on the things that are easy to measure. But again, we need to look at all aspects of our lives and make sure that we're fulfilling God's commandments of loving God and loving neighbor in all things we do, starting with our hearts and our minds. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.